I am Joshua K. Sabra, Esquire, and he is Dr. Miles Salisbury. And you are listening to the Miles Ahead podcast, where we share tactics, techniques, and protocol to improve your physical, mental, and spiritual health while you walk the path of the warrior. Stay tuned. In this episode, Dr. Miles Salisbury and I discuss how much protein should you eat without completely crushing your kidneys and sending you into renal failure or turning you into a giant bodybuilding super mutant. We also cover what fats are good, what fats cause cancer and ugliness, and what are the right types of carbohydrates for you to eat so that other people will like you more. Stay tuned. I'm back.
From Tacoma.
That's right. I'm a big fan of the, that's probably one of my biggest quotes. I've been listening to our own pod, and I say things like, I'm a big fan. We self-reference the pod a lot. But I am a big fan of the Pacific Northwest. I'm an enthusiast for clouds, rain, chilly, seaborne weather, and grunge music. And Tacoma did not disappoint. It was grungy, grimy, wet, sunny, windy, fun, and the town's really young. There's a lot of people really nice. It was a good experience.
And why were you there?
I was there to support my girlfriend as she raced her first ever dragon boat paddle race. So it's I'm sure that I'm going to butcher the terminology, but she races in a boat where she uses a paddle, not an oar, and goes kind of overhead paddle style into the water. And each boat has 2 or 12 pairs. 12 pairs? Yeah. 10 pairs of paddlers. And her team is all women, and they raced against other teams in Tacoma from mostly around the West Coast. It was some Vancouver, BC people, some Tacoma teams, Seattle teams, Portland, and there were a couple other areas. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. She did 4 races, and they took second overall in their division. So
pretty damn good.
Yeah, amazing. That was a first experience for me. Really fun. Really fun day. It was well organized. Everything was fast. Yeah, you could tell the organizers knew what they were doing because they really quickly ran through the heats. They had printouts of the heat results pretty fast, and they posted them so you could check and see your times as the day went through. But it was good. It was a really great experience. Our Airbnb was a few blocks away, so just walked down there, set up shop, hung out for the day. It was a great experience.
And what a good workout, which will segue to what we're talking about today, but talk about calories burned, man.
Yeah. For her, it was 4 sprints, and their practices, they do anywhere between, 6 and 10 sprints, worth of rowing or paddling, 3 times a week. So she gets a fair amount of conditioning in, and she's pretty serious about it. So she lifts weights twice a week as well. So she's a 5-day-a-week athlete.
Boom. Getting after it.
Yeah. She's really good. So shout out to Kayla for being a boss.
Hell yeah.
Doing it. And, so I had a wonderful trip. Just stoked on life. It's really important to get out of your own head, out of your own reality, out of your own
matrix.
Yeah, out of the rut of my normal life. And so going to root for other people was a lot of fun. Had a good. It was just 5 stars, no notes. Just a wonderful weekend.
Excellent.
What are you listening to right now, Miles?
Matt Kearney. He's from Eugene. Really good. A particular song is called Rochester, and he sings about his dad's upbringing. It's actually kind of of course, melancholic song, but it's really good. It's about men and the struggles they go through especially his upbringing. He sings at they play one of his songs at every Oregon Ducks game. It's really good. He's really good. What about you?
Matt Kearney. I went to a show of his here a few years ago.
Solid.
Yeah, so a guy, he played soccer in college.
No way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was the rookie of the year. He scored a couple goals his first game, and they were on a winning streak for the first 3 games of the season. Then he never scored again. And it affected him mentally, and he dropped out and then became a musician.
No big deal. Let me just transfer the skills over here.
It worked out. I'm sure it wasn't a straight line, as you know.
Probably not. Yeah.
But soccer background. Proper football.
Football, yes. Yeah, it was a bittersweet football day for Arsenal today. They won their game. They needed the cheating team, Manchester City, to lose, but they didn't. Next year, we'll make it through, and hopefully Manchester City gets busted for all the crimes they've committed. But we won't go into that because I will talk for like 4 hours on this. So yeah, I'm wearing my stuff today. I'm repping the Arsenal gear, but it's a bittersweet day. But progress. There's always next year, as we say. Anyways, what are we talking about today? All right, did we ask what you're listening to?
Yeah. That was good. That was a good 30-second clip of your opinion / blood pressure medication that you're going to need to continue to be an Arsenal fan
for the rest of my life. Yeah. I was on social media and people are posting bullshit, and some Man City fans like, "Oh, you need a Kleenex?" And I was like, "Yeah, for like the last 15 years. Maybe next year I won't need any." And of course, even you respond nicely, people don't respond back. It's hilarious. They just want you to spit back nasty. I'm like, "I'm not going to play your game."
Oh, I mean, smack talk is like 8/10 of why people do root for football teams at all.
Hell yeah.
Can you imagine being a Jets fan?
Oh, bro. Yeah. Yeah. Or a Mets fan. Yeah. the bastard New York teams that, yeah, that's rough. Yeah.
Yeah. Today we're talking about fitness and nutrition. I've been listening to, is it Bill Withers?
Don't know it.
Lovely Day.
Oh, wait a minute. Have.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Can you sing it?
I would butcher it. We could seam 10 seconds of it into the show, but it's a nice calming song. When I look at you,
there you go.
I know it's gonna be a lovely day.
Yes, that's the song. Yeah. That is a good one.
Yeah, it was not at all in that key or that tempo or anything about how I said it. Was not the way that the song appears. But anyways,
are you ready for karaoke? At least
I'm ready for karaoke.
Yeah.
Okay, enough of me butchering classic music. Today's talk is about nutrition, and I'm writing out a clarifying nutrition module for my program, open enrollment for the metabolic restoration program. Which started Thursday, and the enrollment closes this Thursday. So 7 days of open enrollment. But I'm excited about it because as I am communicating these concepts of nutrition, I'm realizing that I'm putting together concepts that I've taken from textbooks and popular science books for the last 10 years and distilling it into a really simple format that I've not seen it spoken about this way. And when you frame up the conversation with great clarity, you almost automatically eliminate confusion, and you address myths, and it's really easy to answer questions questions about food if you're starting from a really good framework. So I want to share some of that framework today with the audience so that they get a chance to digest.
I saw what you did there. And we're not talking about religion because we talk about nutrition. It seems like religion these days. Very, as Huberman says, it's a barbed wire topic.
Yeah. It's for obvious and not obvious reasons. We have drawn this moat around food, and food gets labeled healthy, unhealthy. It gets labeled cruel or compassionate. It gets labeled like all these qualities that are uh, really central to our values and the way we we see ourselves, and our own humanity gets caught up in what we're eating and how and why. And it's really not necessary. Now, this, I'm not an apologist for the industrial food complex or big ag. There's a lot to be desired here. And we're going to get into some of that, how quickly we mess things up. But realistically, food is supposed to be healing, nurturing, an opportunity to connect with other people and ourselves. And somehow we get confused and we make it into this big deal. It's painful. And it comes oftentimes from an authentic place, because people, whether they have an autoimmune disease or a food allergy or some condition that makes them sensitive to certain things, it does. There are such things as off limits foods.
For sure.
I mean, if you have an eating disorder or a type of disordered eating, or you're addicted to sugar or alcohol, there are lots of off limits foods for you if you're that person. And at the same time, I think if we frame our conversation right, we can liberate some people and give them a sense of peace about what to eat, how much, and how. And through usually I like to do that through the why. Like what are these foods doing for you, and why is it important?
And we're not giving the advice of look at the food pyramid, I'm assuming. I should probably just flip upside down and maybe it's a little more accurate.
Yeah, that's a whole nother podcast to figure out, why we have such a messed up diet in America. That original food pyramid, I think it was born out of a way to sell more grains and sell more dairy products.
Correct. Yeah, and fat was bad. Eat a lot of grains and carbs, and no taco protein, of course, or minimal taco protein.
Yeah, that's right. And a lot of this, we'll talk about what food is and how your body uses it, and then we'll talk about how we went wrong, or how we go wrong continually in America. But to begin the conversation, the way that I think about food starts with this miraculous, almost magical human body that we're piloting, and how our central nervous system is able to create, through the neuroendocrine system and through the metabolism, it's able to create almost any substance, biologically speaking, that exists, and synthesize it into exactly what we need in a delivery mechanism that we can use it in. We can create so much. We can heal any of our organs. We can heal any cell. We can create many cells. Some cells we cannot create new cells for, but some cells we can. We can heal tissue. We can rematrix bone. We can create connective tissue. We can generate stem cells. It's amazing. If we have the proper building blocks, we can regenerate our body in a lot of ways. And if you think about the makeup of our body, every cell in our body is composed of different molecules of amino acids. Amino acids create proteins, and proteins are the building blocks of life. This is biology 101.
Like leucine, things like this.
Yes.
Carnitine.
The scenes, yeah. Anything that's a scene is
Protein.
usually an amino acid. There are 8 essential amino acids, and there are 19 non-essential amino acids. And altogether, with those essential and non-essential amino acids, your body can create any cell that it needs to.
And those are part of protein synthesis. Protein
is just a fancy word for a series of different amino acids put together.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that allows the protein to take a different shape and ergo have a different, become a different cell is the minerals and vitamins that allow it to, or that catalyze the process slightly differently to allow your body to shape a different protein. So the protein is the macronutrient, the bigger building block. So like, for an example, chicken is complete, has all the essential and non-essential amino acids in one substance. So from that, building block of protein, you can create almost anything that you want as long as you have the vitamins and minerals inside your body to allow for the catalyzation of the synthesization. They're called precursors. You need a certain amount of minerals to be precursors to certain hormones and substances, but you can create almost anything with the amino acids or the proteins that you eat.
And they're not a good source of straight up energy necessarily, right? You need carbohydrates.
You're one step ahead of me. We'll come back to that.
I'm jumping.
So protein can be used as energy. It's really, really inefficient. It's mostly the construction material of your body. The energy that it takes to make those proteins and create new cells and rematrix bone can come from protein, but it really comes from two other sources. Fats are the long-term energy source. So running the day-to-day machinery of your body, most of that energy comes from fat. Fat is very dense in terms of energy. You get 42 molecules of ATP from one molecule of fat versus I think 6 or 9 from a molecule of carbohydrate. So fat is very dense in terms of energy source.
And some people get tripped up on the fat on your body versus fat you're eating. It's not the same thing, right? That's adipose tissue versus what's going in your body. It's not the same thing. Well, it can make you fat, but probably more about cardiovascular health.
So you can use your adipose tissue to generate the energy for the for protein synthesis, or to build new muscle, or to recover, or to
stay alive,
rematrix bone. Absolutely. So fat can be used as an energy source. The fat we eat comes in 3 forms: saturated fat, which is like mostly animal fat, monounsaturated fat, and polyunsaturated fat.
Which one is the healthiest?
You used a buzzword.
Buzzword, religion.
It's not so much which one is the healthiest or unhealthiest. The most common in our diet is saturated. It's something like 9 times as common to eat an animal fat or saturated fat. Think butter, think ghee, think any animal product, eggs. Although eggs have some monounsaturated fat as well.
And protein. Just a little bit.
So monounsaturated fat, mostly nuts, nut oils, constitute most of unsaturated fats. Polyunsaturated fats is the most challenging to get in the diet. It's also the one that helps your HDL the most.
It's just going to go there. How does this play with cholesterol?
So people consider polyunsaturated fat as the fat that you just can't get enough of. So before we get on the weeds, protein is the building blocks of your body and of your brain and every cell in your body, from your fingernails to your eyes to your DNA. Fat is the energy source for long-term processes. Carbohydrates is the short-term energy source for performance. Carbohydrates allow you to have stronger muscle contractions, run faster, jump higher, build muscle. So if every performance athlete essentially uses carbohydrates to some degree, because they are required to improve the strength of the tissue that you're using.
Basically pushing glucose to the muscle, right?
That's right. It's the most efficient form of energy for activity. It also helps with cognition and reaction speed. And even if you don't like performance and feeling good and strong, carbohydrates downregulate cortisol.
That's right. So if you eat them before bed, that's why you get a little sleepy and relaxed and chilled out.
That's one thing. And I don't know, I think it's the booby prize to understand, like, oh, the magical dose of, sweet potatoes at this time will downregulate. But what we know is if you want to perform at the highest levels, you're going to need a combination of all 3 of these things. And basically they've done tens of thousands of studies on keto athletes, and keto athletes, their performance is reduced when even if they're advanced, beginner, intermediate, people's performance reduces without carbohydrates.
I'm assuming this is all adjusted for age and body weight and things like that, right? It's tailored to the human. It's not a paint by numbers thing here,
Right.
which when you go to the doctor, it kind of seems like.
Yeah. We'll get into how much a person should eat to feel their absolute best here in a second, but the carbohydrates is the performance enhancing. It regulates the nervous system, right? In ways that we know and probably ways that we don't. And there's inside of each of those different energy substrates, those big macro building blocks, are embedded micronutrients that allow you to efficiently create all of this cellular structure and regenerate and heal and recover your body more efficiently. And if you start to strip away any of those macros, what you end up with, if you strip away protein, you're going to have problems very fast. But if you strip away fats or carbohydrates, you're going to strip away a lot of the micronutrients that allow you to be an effective, efficient, well-rounded human in terms of just biological processes. So the underplay is you're going to create hormonal problems because of the lack of nutrients, because you're going to miss the building blocks of certain things. Not instantly. I've been keto for months. I didn't die. It's not like you can't experiment with this stuff and have fun with it if you don't want to. But for a long-term living, you have to mitigate either with supplements or some other mechanism, some of those micronutrients that you need. And when I say micronutrients, I'm talking about
AG1.
Talking about minerals, the potassium, magnesium, sodium, and what's the other? There's the big four, but there's lots of minerals, and there's 92 secondary minerals.
Potassium?
Did I say potassium?
No.
Potassium, magnesium, sodium.
What's an element? That's those three things, right?
Yeah.
Potassium, magnesium, sodium.
Zinc,
yeah.
So you need minerals, you need vitamins to be absolutely, to function at tip-top
B
levels. B vitamins, all of the vitamins. And if you don't know how many, if you want to look at all the vitamins, just you can Google them. You can pull up, a Chronometer or MyFitnessPal, and that will, in their food diary portion, you can scroll through and it'll just show you all the different nutrient levels.
And you can get blood work to know where you're deficient. Like a lot of people are vitamin D deficient, especially here in freaking Oregon where there's no sun. Just probably get a supplement. Maybe not for most people.
Well, you can look at those deficiencies. You're thinking 3 steps ahead.
Sorry,
because
I have that problem.
Well, you be careful that you don't take a step out of phase. We'll talk about that here in a second.
Good points. Yes.
So if you're trying to optimize your performance, what does that look like? If you just want to feel good, and so I start everybody that I work with in phase 1 of metabolic restoration, which is I don't want to be at a deficit of anything. I want to have enough energy for all the processes. I want to have enough micronutrients and macronutrients. So if you pull up an app, I think I just mentioned a couple, but let's say that you've got MyFitnessPal. If you set your calories to your body weight times 12, so let's say I'm 100 pounds, that'd be 1,200 calories for simple math. But it's going to be essentially 20% more than your body weight in calories. Set your calories to that number, and then set your protein to 35% of your calories, and you're going to get an output of protein that's around between 0.7 and 0.8 grams per pound of body weight.
That's a magical number.
That's a magical number for a variety of reasons. Why is it 0.7 or 0.8? Because regardless of your size, whether you're a small person or a large person, you have the same metabolic biological needs that another person of a similar size is going to need. So whether you're a 120-pound marathon runner or you're a 120-pound couch potato, you still have a brain, you still have a nervous system, you still have bones. Now, you may not be adding density. We'll talk about where that comes from in a second. The adaptation part comes from. But just to be alive and to be fully functional and optimized, you're going to need about the same amount of protein. And just in case you're wondering, well, Josh, I'm not going to be a bodybuilder or a performance athlete, I don't need that much protein. You do. You absolutely do. And, I'll link to some literature to allow you to go do the research, but suffice to say that you do. Because even a bodybuilder, at the most, they're going to eat 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. And that's if they're training 6 days a week and they're going after it and they want to quote unquote optimize for gains.
And isn't it harder as you age to uptake protein at some point?
The leucine threshold, great question. We'll talk about where this goes off the rails. But yeah, as you get older, you need to hit your leucine threshold, which is how much protein do you need to ingest at once to be able to trigger protein synthesis. And that number is, roughly for a 20-year-old. And I'm pulling this out of the deep depths of the files here.
Don't need much. You got hormones pumping to do it.
But you can look it up, and it's like 2.5 grams of leucine. Well, great, Josh. What the hell does that mean? How much chicken do I need to eat? Or how much, if you have a complete protein source, most protein sources, including vegan sources, are going to be pretty close to the same amount of leucine in them. That means you need about 25 to 30 grams of protein at 20, roughly 30 to 35 at 30 or 40-year-olds. If you're 40 and above or 50, you're looking at 40 grams of protein
at least
per meal, right? Per sitting. So it gets significant. So as a default, of course, if I'm working with somebody who's middle-aged, I'm going to set them at 40 grams and we're going to see how they do with that.
Per meal.
Yeah, because then 3 meals, that's 120 grams of protein. So if you were 150 pounds,
you're almost there.
You essentially are there. If you're 200 pounds, you've got a little bit more to go. You maybe need to get up to 160 or 170, of grams of protein. But that will keep you from getting rickets, and it does a lot of things physiologically and psychologically. So when you get to that level of protein, well, hold on. Yeah, I'll answer this now. So when you get to that level of protein, what it does is it satiates a lot of the psychological need for hunger. A lot of our hunger comes from the fact that we're losing muscle, because the body has no storage center for amino acids. So it has to borrow from recycled cells
and fats
or muscle.
Right. Muscle first. Yeah. Then fat. Yeah.
It has to pull from muscle because there is no amino acid for building. Many of the essential amino acids have to come from those resources. So that ravenous hunger that you get, your body knows you haven't had any protein. So it's going to make you want to go out and kill someone or something and eat them.
Or a bunch of sugar.
And what happens, and it's compounded by the fact that if you eat like a meal, if we go out to, have a real nice taco, or tacos at a taco bar, unless you have 6 chicken tacos, you might get 2,000 calories, but only 3 or 4 ounces of protein. Right. So you want to be really mindful of that. But if you get adequate protein, your appetite, which is mostly psychological, will be much satiated, and your drive for food will decrease. You'll still have psychological drive for food, and that's okay. But you're not going to be as ravenous, and you're going to be a lot more calm for the rest of the day, because that sense of catabolism or safety or satiety is already checked off. So that's going to help a lot. You'll feel a lot better. You also, in my experience and the experience of the people that I work with, you won't have the quote unquote room in your belly for, binge eating junk food. You'll already feel good and full.
Something that's playing on the leptin and ghrelin neurotransmitter aspect.
I have no idea. I speculate a couple of things. Americans are very type A. We're very forward thinking. We're workaholics in general, whether it's a mom trying to be productive for the household, or it's a dad trying to be productive as for the household, or it's a mom or a dad at work. People are constantly solving problems, and that cortisol dopamine triangle, it's that in and of itself depresses appetite. I don't think a lot of people have any idea what a real hunger signal even feels like.
I would agree. And if you're not sleeping, your leptin and ghrelin signaling gets totally cattywampus.
That's right. So So just from a habitual and neurological loop perspective, we naturally depress our true appetites, and the food in our environment, we're going to get into this in pitfalls here in a second. The food in our environment is not conducive to our health outcomes. And some of that is accidental. Some of that is intentional because it's expensive. Protein has a low shelf life. It goes bad really easily. It's also the most difficult to transport. It needs to be refrigerated. But even if it's vegetarian sources of protein, like Greek yogurt, eggs, those things need to be refrigerated. They're very shelf unstable. And so restaurants and different places are incentivized to not carry them because of the difficulty serving them.
Or enter preservatives, which are god awful.
Totally. We'll hit that up here in a second because we're talking about carbs. So that's the protein number, 0.8. 35% of your body weight or your calories from protein is going to net you approximately the right number, give or take. And then the leftover numbers, about 30 and 30 or 35 and 30 percentages. If you're thinking 100% of your calories, 35% go to protein, another 35% go to fat, and then the remainder 30% go to carbs. You're going to end up with somewhere between 100 and 200 grams of carbohydrates per day, around 40 to 60 grams of fat. And fats, like we just said, that there's not necessarily a healthy or unhealthy. The ratio of your fats is what bogs you down, what gives people problems. This is the, omega-3 to omega-6 9 ratio.
Yes.
Omega-6s and 9s, that quote unquote inflammatory hormone or chemicals or fats, those are much more common. Saturated fat, much more common.
Like canola oil, things like that.
I would need a chart to read off of, but
I know fish oil is 3. That's good.
Yeah. So let's I'm going to briefly hit the fat ratios because it's fun. It's also wonky, but the big thing about fats is you want to maximize your polyunsaturated fats and you want to maximize your omega-3s. Omega-3s are really the direct nutrition of the sun. So the reason why fish have omega-3s in it is because they're eating algae and krill that have krill that have eaten algae, and algae has absorbed the UV radiation of the sun.
Fascinating.
And it's like a leftover from photosynthesis.
Man, it's super good for your brain too. Choline.
That's right.
Eggs as well.
So you can get algae oil directly. And at this point, if I'm taking omega-3s, I take them from algae oil, not because fish is bad, but because the fish population has been so polluted that the companies that source fish oil and fish, oh gosh, I forgot the name of the gristle that they grind up all the leftover fish after they sell the cuts. They grind that up into the hot dogs of fish is what you're eating.
The nitrates of fish.
You're eating for omega-3s. But the plants are the source of the omega-3 part that it seems like, we're still studying it, but it seems like our body absorbs the plant version just as ready as does the animal version.
Does it give enough? Because sometimes with plants versus animals, you get less.
It seems like we absorb it at the same rate.
Okay.
Because, I don't know why.
So for vegans, this is good news.
That's right. So if you want a clean, compassionate source, you can get from algae. But also if you get grass-fed, they used to make chicken eggs that were omega-3s, but it was expensive to feed chickens real food, like chickpeas and things that they would
actually eat. Yeah.
They would actually eat flax seeds. You can get some places you can still get omega-3 chicken eggs,
like farmers markets,
because you get a biodynamic farm that feeds them those more expensive feeds. And we're talking cents on the dollar, but a big corporation is going to take that and be like, well, I'm not going to spend extra $7 million on chicken feed.
Sadly.
So, the theme here is that the animals are healthy to eat if you eat a healthy animal. And the diet of the animal is essentially your diet. So cows that are grass-fed and finished, they have omega-3s in their fat as well. Most of the animals that we eat have access to that, not the way that our industrial food complex has
Reported it
brought
to me.
them up.
Yeah.
Brought-
So you really are what you eat.
That's right. So we've got protein, we've got fats, about 40 to 60 grams of fat, depending on who you are and how big of a person you are. And then the carbohydrates between 1 to 200 grams. This is the most religious part of the food groups right now, although protein is having a resurgence. We'll talk about that in a second. Carbohydrates. People talk about healthy and unhealthy carbs, or good and bad carbs. Carbohydrates have the pretty similar qualities to your body, regardless of form, but it gets complicated fast, or it can get toxic fast. Carbohydrates, as I said, performance, helps you build muscle if you're lifting weights, if you're training, competing, if you want to improve your cognition. Glucose is what feeds the brain the best. The brain can run on many things, like many parts of our body. We can adapt fuels, but
especially important for like endurance athletes, I'd imagine.
Well, oh my God. I shout out to my intern / friend / mentor, Ross, Imlo, Enrich Nutrition. Maybe we'll put a link to his content too.
The guru.
Yeah, he helped me change my workout fueling plan. So now I enjoy running, and I've dropped my 5K and 10K times by 25%. It's out of control.
Nice work.
It's just from changing the food source. So more carbohydrates around earlier prior to training.
Mm-hmm.
But so carbohydrates improve your not just your performance, but your recovery, help regulate your nervous system. And it's really this beautiful symphony of nutrition that when you get them all together, you are able to maximize your effectiveness, not just an athlete, but as a person. And when you mess up or pollute the purity of your food concepts by saying things like good and bad carbs. Let's talk about where we go off the rails. When you have a simple carbohydrate like sugar or honey or maple syrup,
white bread,
sucrose, it goes into it enters your bloodstream faster. It spikes your glucose, or what is it, glycemic index?
Mm-hmm. And then your insulin response.
You have an insulin response to it. And chronic high insulin will create a host of problems.
Type 2 diabetes.
It just global inflammation,
mm-hmm.
local inflammation. Your injuries will feel worse.
Mm-hmm. Risk for cancer goes up.
And lots of things happen.
Cardiovascular health.
But if you have some honey in your water before you lift weights, you'll lift better.
Yeah.
You'll perform at a greater level, and you will recover faster because of the aforementioned nervous system regulation.
They're using it. Mm-hmm. It's not just sitting around.
And yes, and you're spiking your cortisol levels, and you're actually cortisol helps you adapt. So when you have that, the important part about any hormonal spike is a proper hormonal response. So when you have a bout of cortisol for a workout,
it's good.
It's signaling for a specific adaptation. And if you, as we've been talking about in this entire conversation, if you have the resources already in your bloodstream that the nervous system just asked for, lo and behold, the adaptation occurs. And you get the signal for protein synthesis. It says, hey, nervous system, we're lifting heavy things. Apparently this guy's working in a coal mine now. So I'm going to need bigger shoulders. I'm going to need bigger legs. What can we do about that? And then the nervous system checks and goes, well, actually, I've got some glycogen. I got some amino acids. I've got enough fat stores to build the rest of this tendon here for the next 72 hours to recover from this. Okay, we can do some bigger shoulders. And then boom, it gets to work. And that super compensation occurs. But it takes time. You don't notice that in the workout or that week. What you do is at the end of the month, you take your measurements again and you say, oh, my body is changing, because you've given it the resources, you've given it the stimuli, and you've given it the refractory period it needs to recover from that bout of training. Now, where things get off the rails is, well, okay, so I can eat Twinkies then and recover from my training?
If you're 17.
The answer is you kind of can. And this is like, we're thin slicing here, but I want to zoom in because people are going to have these questions. Well, isn't a complex carbohydrate better than empty
carb,
a simple carbohydrate? It is more nutrient dense. You have more B vitamins in sweet potatoes than you do in sugar, but honey has B vitamins too. And it's got multiple forms of sugar in it. Some go to your liver, some go to your brain, some go to your muscles. It's actually pre-formatted in a way that we really like to eat. I probably nature intended that.
I was just going to say that.
And if you go to complex carbohydrates like potatoes, yes, it does have a lower insulin response. It has more of the vitamins and minerals and fibers that allow you to process that for longer periods of time. It is a great source of fuel, and it's just not as instantly available. So if you pre-workout if you eat a couple of sweet potatoes, 30 minutes before you hop on the treadmill, you're not going to get any of those benefits. You might get some, but an hour or two, okay, now we're talking. The day before, yes. So complex carbohydrates are great. They're just not instantaneously available. And then let's go to the Twinkie example, because I want to hit this too. Well, isn't Twinkie like processed and toxic and has preservatives and all those things you're mentioning? It does. But if you lift weights and you have one Twinkie, well, that's 25 grams of sugar. Your body doesn't really care. It will have to work harder. The liver will have to process those toxins and move them out of the body, and then the kidneys will filter them and you'll pee them out. But you probably wouldn't notice a post-workout Twinkie or honey bun.
Like a one-off or whatever.
What happens is, in addition to and versus instead of, there's a concept. There's no bad foods, there are bad habits. If you wake up and you have a breakfast of Twinkies, you're actually front loading a lot of work on that liver and a lot of work on those kidneys. And what happens over time is you damage the liver because it becomes scarred by the
NAFLD.
non-alcoholic fatty liver disease.
Yeah.
He's Dr. Miles with his acronyms. I'm like, what are you talking about? Oh, yeah.
I got so many.
So toxic foods are not lethal or instantly toxic. The poison is in the dose. Your liver can clear a lot of your body can solve a lot of problems. But my question to a person who's listening to this podcast is, are you setting up your meals in your life in a way that's really easy for you to get what you want and really difficult for you to get what you don't want? Or are you hoping that your body can accommodate all of the stresses that you're placing on it and then somehow end up at that place that you want to be? And what I like to do with my students, and I'm doing this in my program now, is I want to set them up in such a way that it's difficult to fail and it's really easy to succeed. So we get the dominoes set up in the first week or two. We orient a person's nutrition plan and sleep schedule to fit their life in such a way that it bookends nicely and they're not trying to ramrod something that doesn't belong. So you can have a glass of wine. If that's what your family does, wonderful. If you are a purist like my friend Aziz, who has no processed food in his diet, okay, great. I can work with you too. We'll put some honey in your freaking water bottle. We'll get you some creatine and it'll be fine. The key is can you set the variables up in such a way that make it really easy for you to get what you want? And in terms of the morality, well, processed foods are bad, and if you have an allergy or food allergy, well, then yes, then that is a toxic food for you. So if you are gluten intolerant, okay, I don't argue with anybody on any of their particulars that they have. That just allows us to use different paints to get to the same portrait.
It's not paint by numbers.
So if you've got your protein, your fat, and your carbs set up, and you've got them aliquoted properly, 35% for protein, the remainder and the remaining 2 fairly balanced, what you have is a system. And if you select your menu and you start to use it in one of those free tools that I just mentioned, now you'll start to see those little bars fill up. Oh, my macro and micronutrients start to, I've got folate and vitamin B. And then it'll be I don't need a blood test to show you where you're deficient. I say, based on the foods you like to eat, you're always going to be short on vitamin C. So what do? Do you want to squeeze a lemon into every bottle of water? Do you want to add some Brussels sprouts to dinner?
Supplement.
Do you want to take a vitamin C supplement? And here's what I'll say is a lifestyle beats a Band-Aid. So if you can live that way, if you Dr. Miles takes his supplements every morning and every night, and he just lives that way, then great. We've got a semi-permanent fix for anything that he wants, because we can just hang that habit on this habit he already has. But if you're somebody like me who's a child of chaos, and I have a very structured first 4 hours of the day, and then it's blah, 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 I'm just doing whatever, I'm going to be a little bit more disciplined about how I do my meal prep, so that I have fewer variables to manage as the day goes on.
Which is good for cognitive load, stress. I'm really getting the sense why one needs a coach around this, because this is already probably confusing to a lot of people, I'd imagine. I mean, we're getting top level and then getting granular, but it's giving the listener a good idea of like, it's really hard to eat and get what you need and get the results you want if you're trying to do that. If you're winging it, oh boy.
It's really hard if your thesis is I have to try harder, or if you start with a bad strategy, no amount of effort is going to get you there. If you start with a good strategy, you will be surprised at how easy it is. But you have to have a strategy, and you have to have an objective. So at the top of the conversation, I started out with, you have a magical nervous system, but if you give it what it needs, it will do anything for you. It'll repair any system in your body. If the objective is to be healed, be whole, be powerful, then you should have a meal plan, a nutrition plan that allows you to do that. And if you see all of those, concepts that I shared as the building blocks, it becomes quite obvious how things might be laid out in a way to make your life easier. And you'll see the problem. So if you're a vegetarian and you're like, well, okay, Josh, so protein's the most important thing, but I only have 40 grams of protein in my normal day because I've just done your little audit here. And, what am I going to do? Well, you have to fall. Okay. I would encourage you, I would have you consider falling in love with what you need and what you want. Because what you want, if I'm talking to a vegetarian, whether it's because of compassion reasons, and it's, I don't like the way we treat animals, no argument, agreed. Almost anything you get in the food industrial complex is going to be kind of rough on the animals. Not kind of rough, very rough. So I don't try to talk people out of that. Then you have to fall in love to be that person. Then you have to fall in love with Greek yogurt. Maybe you need to fall in love with tofu. Maybe you need to fall in love with cottage cheese. Blah. If you can find it and sourced in a way that makes you happy, that is acceptable to you. So there's vegetarian options that can be protein dense, but I swear no amount of Lara bars is going to get you there. No amount of health food that you buy in a store in a box is going to get you there. It has to be built and guided by you.
You have a lot of trips to the toilet, maybe, and some gas.
So, I mean, I haven't met that vegetarian or vegan that was of the version of health that I'm looking for, but God, go with God if that's important to you.
You see them on Instagram sometimes. You always wonder, is that real? And maybe some people have hit that Goldilocks zone, but it seems really hard.
Some people find it later in life. Who just turned vegan? Dana Lynn Bailey's husband. He was an Olympic lifter. Really, he's got a clothing brand. Flag or fail? Or no, flag.
Not familiar.
Flag nor fail. He's a visionary guy, but he was a meat eater for 40 years and put on 200 pounds of muscle.
Did he do it for sort of cholesterol reduction or something? Or?
I think he just, he's a sweet guy. I think he just...
Oh, compassionate.
I think he just really realized that it was never going to be a good deal. And he's like a hunter and he cares about like the wild and, the land and really gives a shit. And
which most hunters do, contrary to popular belief.
Totally. Yeah. No, nobody who's out in the woods doesn't get the importance of
the cycle of life.
Yeah, nature and balance. And so I think he did that as a sort of realization that he wanted to, it would change his life. And he got really lean and it helped him out. And, someone on his Instagram said, do you think you could have done that if you had been vegetarian from the start? Because he lost like 60 pounds and he looks great and feels great or whatever. And then that's wonderful. And he said, that's a good question. I don't know.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are unhealthy. They hit veganism and they feel super awesome at first because they're dropping a bunch of this shit. But then it's not sustainable because then they're not getting what they need over time. So for a minute they're like, this is amazing. And they double down and it just doesn't work. It doesn't work.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think a lot of people have that cleansing effect.
Yeah.
Like I got rid of a lot of things, and that's right. I think the same thing with the carnivore diet. When people just eat meat, I'm like, what were you doing before that was so bad? That because how did you lose 20 pounds just eating pork belly? Like
I stopped eating Twinkies.
So we get off the rails right now. The upcoming trend on Reddit and the internet is protein leveraging, and it talks about what we were just talking about, how important protein is, how it curbs appetite, how it helps you lose weight, build muscle, all those things, which has always been true. The thesis is that protein has been pulled out of our diet on purpose or accidentally. And I think it's a combination of economic factors and
the food pyramid.
Yeah. And meat doesn't sell as well as it used to. I think, I'm sure, I know that overall meat consumption has zenithed in the United States. I think it's a factor of like both cost, as I said, and, people's awareness of how toxic, conventionally raised meat is.
It's pretty messed up. And also like it's so much easier to get that dopamine hit from sugars and carbs. It just feels really good. And then you can eat more and more and more.
Well, and you said it feels really good. It's also convenient.
Super.
Like, if you don't have a steak at your house, you have a craving. It's not like you can just,
fry one up,
toss one on the grill. You have to drive to the store and get it. And but you can keep a gallon of ice cream in your in your fridge, no problem.
Let's talk about hunters. So they'll take an elk back and they've got frozen elk steak for 6 months. That's
6 months, 2 years.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, they'll give it away to friends. Like there's a lot of meat on that. That's why it's natural. They're eating normal foods. They're not getting pumped with antibiotics. Super good for you.
Yeah, exactly. No, the wild game, it's out of control. Anything wild grown, really, really, really good for you. That we should, we could do a whole food science or soil science episode where we just talk about soil health.
Boy.
And
diminishing, isn't it?
Is it? You can restore this stuff in a generation. People talk about it like it's doomsday. It's like, no, like every country has soil problems because it takes time and energy to put them. It takes time and energy to build a skyscraper. It takes time and energy to build a farm that's like biodynamic and but we have the time and the energy.
It's like cutting down trees and regrow them.
It's just not profitable.
Bingo.
In this model.
If it doesn't make sense, it's usually about money.
Yeah, and I don't want to take away from that. Well, first let's close this food conversation and talk about what people can do. So, where the objective is to balance out our hormones, our body, and restore our strength. The how we get there is through proteins, fats, and carbs. The ratios, if you're ready for an integrated approach, 35% protein, the remainder 35% to fats, 30% carbs. What you end up with is 100% of your calories accounted for and distributed fairly evenly between proteins, fats, and carbs. If you like carbohydrates like I do, you can have more, and then you just dial down the fat until you get to that even number of calories, which is your body weight times 12. And that in and of itself, if you live like that, you're going to eliminate most or a bunch of your deficiencies, and it'll be obvious what your deficiencies are, which you can look at through nutrition. You can look at through supplementation. You can, if you want to go on a deeper dive, click on the link below. I'll have my free workshop up right now for women. I'm enrolling people into a metabolic restoration program that lasts for 8 weeks, and you get all of this stuff straight from the horse's mouth and so much more. We got to talk about exercise. And that plays into this conversation because I talked earlier about the stimulus versus to create super compensation or change in your physiology. Well, also part of the metabolic restoration program is to set your environment up and your exercise to create stimulus for the response that you want while reducing fatigue. So you want to maximize your stimulus to fatigue ratio so that you are not overtaxing your body. You're just getting what you need from your exercise program and nothing that you don't. And I was sharing with you earlier that even I, who preach this stuff day in and day out, was probably working too hard because I switched my program up recently. And the lightest, most simple program that I've done in a decade. And I'm sore, I'm building muscle, I'm moving the ball forward, and I'm training much more gently than I'd ever trained. And I think back to this concept of if you don't have a strategy, the only tactic you have is try harder.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking to all you guys out there, especially, just do it harder. I've been there.
Yeah, I'm there all the time. Anytime I have a reaction to anything, that's the reaction, is just push harder on the door. The door says pull, but I still push hard.
School for the Gifted. See that Far Side cartoon? Yeah.
So, the moral of the story is food is there. Food isn't your fuel. Food is you. You are what you eat. Your body can do anything, can literally create all of the health that you want if you give it exactly what it needs, if you give it the building blocks and the basics. And we get paranoid, and we get in our search and demand for control, we try really hard to squeeze and hold on to these things that are labeled as healthy or what everyone else is doing. I've done this. I remember when keto got popular back in the day, I read a book on it. A lot of my peers were doing it. So I lived keto for 4 months, and it wasn't the worst thing in the world. I did eat a lot more bacon, but it was another chance for me to learn what I kind of already know, which is we have to take a holistic approach to everything. Otherwise, you get short-term gain and long-term pain.
Good tagline, yeah. So easy to just pick one, because it's cognitive overload. I'll just do keto, or I'll just do carnivore, or whatever, because you don't have to think. And you get the short-term gain, but then the pain comes later. Like when I was doing intermittent fasting, I felt really good for a while, but then my energy levels sucked. My injuries weren't healing. And it's like, oh, probably I should eat some carbs because I need to heal and I need to grow. And so I've stopped that. It was an interesting run, though. I felt really clear cognitively, but you almost had to be super militant, because if you have anything that spikes glucose, it takes you out of ketosis, and then you start to have this brain fog feeling, and it's like, it was just a little bit, and I was out of it.
I'm going to push back on you, but not because I know anything about this, because I just want to zoom out a little bit and look holistically at what else is going on in your life. You said
I can be the guinea pig. All good.
Well, you said I was really clear,
like cognitively.
Cognitively, is that when you were dipping into the Zen?
No, this is prior. Yeah.
Prior to Zen.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
and I was less hungry, right? You start losing your appetite, which probably isn't good, because I'm not the type of person who needs to lose a lot of weight, right? And I was just trying it because I was, I had the continuous glucose monitor on. I was really messing with that. And I was trying to keep it in the green all the time. If you have any carbs, it's going to spike it. And you didn't want it to go over 40 milligrams per deciliter. And so I was trying to get militant and I want no spikes. Well, I could do that, but then I was feeling junk later, crashes, injuries weren't healing, things like that. But appetite, if you do it, if you fasted for a whole day, the next day, you're actually not even hungry. It's bizarre, and you probably know what's going on in the body, but maybe you feel more clear because it's almost like a survival instinct. Like, oh, you got to get real sharp because you got to find food. Maybe it frees up some space there or something. I'm not sure. That's just what I experienced when I was doing it.
No, I think there is a lot to having relatively low, high insulin sensitivity and low insulin levels. Um, I actually think it's good for cognition, I guess, to put it that way. I think but the point holistically, you said wounds weren't healing, your injuries weren't recovering from them. And that's understandable because you're going to be, if you're on a cut, if you are hypocaloric, you're going to feel tired and you're going to feel,
Cranky.
yeah, certainly irritable, cranky. But that's normal. Part of that is just the pressure of back to what I was saying is having no carbs in your system.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have any natural regulation or dietary regulation of your nervous system going through you at all times. But I mean, you're going to be cranky on a cut, and is my experience.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not the worst thing in the world. And if that's not when you started dipping into Zen, or you didn't mainline the coffee or the caffeine.
Oh, I was still doing that. That's the only thing I would have is black coffee or a Jocko energy drink because there's no sugar.
Yeah, but how many of those were you hitting a day?
One, just in the morning.
So you do one energy drink or one coffee a day. I do more than that now. I think that that's a pretty good, when you're going through a fat loss phase. It's being irritable is almost a given. Being cold, were you ever cold? Like,
no, I run really hot.
You ran hot?
Yeah, when I do cryotherapy, they're always like, you're like at 98 degrees when they take my temperature. I don't know why. I always run hot.
Okay, so you didn't get chilled. You didn't. Yeah, I would say that was a fairly successful, cut. I think when you just run on those chronic injuries that won't heal, that's the hard part. And then if you're trying to put on muscle, you're
It's
obviously
real hard.
Yeah, you're gonna have a hard time doing that. But yeah. So yeah, I mean, it could be worse. If you're trying to optimize performance or build muscle, recovery, optimize your performance, part of that is you will always be recovering from something because you're a human. So yeah. But I wouldn't say that was an unsuccessful bout of going keto, because were you basically keto while you were measuring, or were you do some carbs?
I would do some carbs later in the day. I tried inadvertently once to do intermittent fasting when I had the analorrhapy that you just went through, the colonoscopy. I didn't eat for a day and a half besides coffee. And yeah, the first half of the day sucked and then it was fine. It's really weird.
Yeah, no, I think, I mean, you use that as motivation to, move through something, and you got lean. I don't know. I think it was a good set of data set for you to look at.
Experiment.
Yeah. And so I think I'll close my thoughts with, it's not about right or wrong. It's about what is creating the outcome that you want. And my girlfriend constantly says, like, is this sandwich healthy? Or I'm eating healthy, right?
Loaded question.
And number one, good luck. Try to give your partner advice on what to eat.
Do I look fat in this dress? This is a dangerous question.
We all know the right answer to that.
Yes.
I hate that color on you. But the healthy and unhealthy is irrelevant. It's what is getting you. Is what you're doing getting you closer to what you want? And that's the question that I ask my students, and that is the question that I ask anybody who's asking me for advice. Is like, well, if you're asking me, is this going to help me with my goals of fat loss or building muscle? I'll answer honestly. And if it's unclear, I'll ask questions. But basically, like, are you setting yourself up for success or failure? And I think on that regard, most people know they're moving further away from their goals, but they don't know about what a true strategy would look like, and they don't really know what success looks like anyway. So they don't really know how to answer that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think lack of clarity is that's why I wanted to have this conversation on the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Clarity is what has been missing, is always missing often missing from the nutrition conversation. And we talk about good or bad or get moral about something that is very functional. And I'm a why learner. So once I understand what protein does or what fat does and why we use it, I have a lot more buy-in
Mm-hmm.
with the process.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. Where my mind went with the conversation relating to my field is how it affects the nervous system. That's really fascinating because we know your nervous system is really informed by, in utero especially, if your mom is really stressed the fuck out, you can pop out with a pretty high revving nervous system. And if they ate like shit, I wonder if, compounding or if they ate better. That's why women take prenatal vitamins and things like that. You want to cook right. So say someone had a really stressed out mom and they came out and they a lot of trauma. Could eating in a certain way for your goals, like you're talking about, help somebody while they're working like in psychotherapy to help regulate the nervous system? Could you bring in this as an adjunct to help someone regulate or soothe their nervous system?
Well, you first of all, you're the one that could answer that question, but you teed me up to say yes, because that's the answer. But the reality is it's very difficult to, if you don't have another mechanism to regulate your nervous system. The diet that we were just talking about, a healthy, balanced diet, is kind of like a dopamine, a dopamine repair diet. And if you don't know what that means, Google the dopamine diet, and it'll come up with just very normal, like healthy food and recipes and things. And I don't know how people get healthy mentally without getting healthy in their diet and exercise, because I don't really, besides sleep,
just going to go there,
and food, I don't really have a way of regulating my mood outside of exercise and talking to a friend. And that's about it. All the other mechanisms have side effects, like drinking caffeine, drinking alcohol, drinking, or using any substance, binge watching TV. But all of them, and you could speak more to this, any of those side ways, like when I binge watch like a television show, like I'm a big fan of Fallout.
Great show.
I really enjoy the game and the writing, and they did a good job with the series. So I'll watch an episode, but I didn't really want to watch 2 in a row, partly because they're so freaking crazy and scary, and partly because I get anxious if I just sit there and watch, episode after episode of content, not because it's not good, but because like if I'm putting something off or there's something on my mind, I want to address it. And so like at the end of the day, I can do one if I've tied up with the loose ends, but like there's almost like a rubber band effect on avoidance for me. And
you're not using it as avoidance, which is good. That's what most people use it for. They feel stressed out, especially guys. That's a great numbing mechanism, distraction.
Doesn't it? Okay, so I feel like these things compound, and I mean they compound, and then we get immune to them because
habit.
When I broke my arms, I was stuck in the house, couldn't move. I watched a lot of TV, but by season 4 of Tombstone, I was like, or not Tombstone. What's the Kevin Costner one with the cowboys and they're in Montana and
Yellowstone.
Yellowstone. After season 4 of Yellowstone, I was like, I was over it. I was like, I just want to get out of here. And then I started drinking. And then after about 10 days of drinking, I like couldn't physically drink anymore. I was like, I'm just using up all of the leverage. And they just all ran out of gas for me. And that's when I started therapy. I was like, I have to.
There you go.
It's over for me.
Mm-hmm. You exhausted them all.
Yeah. Isn't there some level of attrition to the?
There's a blast radius for these for sure. That's why people hop from one substance or behavior to the next. Mind hates a vacuum, and if you're not learning to regulate your nervous system and or get therapy and work with the stuff that's coming up, you'll be like, cool, I quit booze. Oh, I found opioids or whatever, just swap it for the next thing. Or even exercise can become an addiction.
Oh, 100%. And this is why I never labeled any of the avoid or coping mechanisms that I had as an addiction. People would say, my friends, I think everybody in the 20s, like they have that pub life and people get tired of it. And my friends were always like, I'm tired of drinking. I'm tired of this. I'm like, I'm tired of being broke and confused about my life's purpose.
You had some inner wisdom.
I actually, the beer I like. I don't mind hanging out with you guys. That's probably right now it's the nicest part of my day because I hate my life.
The social contact is good.
I need to make some money.
Yeah.
Oh man. But yeah, so anyway, point is, we've gone long, but food is healing. Food is important. Food is a critical part of everyone's diet, or everyone's diet. And if you want to learn more about this stuff, check out my program. The link in the show notes and bio.
Sounds good. Final thought. Get a coach if you're curious about this. Just like with anything else, that's why I do psychotherapy. If you're confused about what's going on within your internal and mental world, you get a strength and conditioning coach if you want goals around body, and then food is part and parcel with that.
If you're not proud of your health and yourself, whether it's your physical fitness or mental fitness or how you look or how you feel, ask yourself why. It's been long enough. If the answer to that question, am I proud of myself, isn't a hell yes, and figure it out.
Pull some threads.
That's right.
All right. Well, we'll keep pulling the threads. Until next time, we are out.
Peace.